I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor at Gold Derby, here with Eimer Ní Mhaoldomhnaigh, costume designer on the Banshees of Inisherin. Eimer, I really love the film's color palette, to be honest. While the physical spaces that the characters inhabit are quite, austere and desaturated, the primary colors that from your work really pop off the screen, and I wasn't expecting that. The reds, the blues, the yellows in particular. What inspired you to make those choices?
Well, lovely to meet you, Robert. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, for me, um, tell us something about the character and just bring an added kind of interest to the character. And when I spoke to Martin first, Martin wanted quite an austere palette, exactly what you were talking about there with the production design and the interiors. And he said, I want I want it to have kind of a slightly Western feel or something. And I thought, okay, Martin, okay, we're going to get on great. So he wanted, it was really important for Martin, like he has everything worked out, and he wanted to see the figures of Colin, Sonny, Larry, and Pádraic, so Brendan and Colin, walking through the landscape, Irish, green fields, blue sea, it would be these dark figures, these silhouettes that you could pick up going through the landscape. And I thought, okay, fine, I can do that. But, then I need to bring something to the table also. And, at the time, there's kind of a feeling that, in general, that in kind of working class cultures, that that things are very muted and dirty, and but when you look at, there's an awful lot of work being done now, some of it I don't really kind of take on board, the colorization of photographs and all of that. Some of it is still, I think, a little bit kind of still being worked out, and it's a little bit too digital for me. But I was able to visit the National Museum here in Ireland, and a very good relationship with the curators there. And, there were beautiful colors being used. And I just really wanted to pay homage to that in the color palette. So I said, yeah, Martin, you can have your dark silhouettes, but we have to bring some of that earthiness and that beauty and that idea of craft and of tonality. And, but it wasn't just Martin, like Colin and Brendan had to buy into this also. And I knew once Colin and Brendan bought into the whole concept, I mean, asking Colin to wear a woolly jumper and tuck it into his trousers and then belt it, and Brendan to wear something that's not exactly authentically Irish, that has this kind of a Western feel. But, like I've worked with them both before, and we had lots of discussions about it. And and they have such a fantastic relationship with Martin as well, that, we were able to, swing it. And it was just fantastic to be able to use the colors and the textures that give it that sort of Irish quality, but also give it a very, it was important to me that I was designing something for Martin,
Yeah.
that I was taking his script and really helping to develop and create the characters that were on the page, to give them a much more three-dimensional edge to them, especially because it's a period film, not to go for the whole kind of,
That's
grungy,
right.
dirty peasant,
Yeah.
they had to really, and they needed to jump from the script onto the screen. And I wanted, Martin's scripts and his plays and his cinema is always, you come away going, who is that guy? I hope I never meet them
I
in a
know.
dark street. I just wanted to really, serve that script and serve those characters, but give it welly,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. I think that's the strength of your work. I know you've been working for a long time in a lot of Irish productions in particular. And in fact, even in Foundations, that one of my favorite shows, beautiful work, Curtain Butt. Anyway, so
Yeah.
my expectations, though, to be completely honest, Emma, were that this was going to be I wasn't even going to notice the costumes. It was going to be rustic, intentionally drab, utilitarian even, and you gave us something completely different. Unexpected, devoid of any cliche, colorful, full of character and intrigue. And I mean, DP Ben Davis brought up your costumes. Mark Tilsley brought up your costumes, the production
Yeah.
designer. So what is that like when you get to really go somewhere that people aren't expecting on a Martin McDonagh film, which is supposed to be dark and, you know, mysterious? You went in a completely different direction.
Oh, I can't tell you how fantastic it was, and it is, you know, because I only saw the film for the first time 6 months ago, and you know, seeing it the first time, and I saw it, you know, with all the cast and the crew, and you're kind of like a bit, oh, you know, and then I've seen it, I've watched it a few times since then, and I still can't believe that Martin and Colin and Brendan gave me free rein to do this. You know, Martin and everybody's saying it now the last few weeks, and with the Golden Globes and everything, and you know, but it's just so true. We all did it for Martin, okay? So for me, the excitement of working with him, the excitement, I was working on Foundation when I sitting with Kurt and Bart, when I got an email saying, Eimer, I have a film, I was like, you know, I just thought, okay, okay, okay. You know, I couldn't let the opportunity go, but I think it's really important what you said there about cliche as well. That was really important for me, that it wasn't going to be, there was no cliches. I didn't want any cliches in this. You know, and I did, and a lot of costume designers, certainly in the past, costume design has changed in the last 10 or 15 years, which is fantastic. It's always amazing when you work in something and it's changing, and you know, there's so many new people coming in, all of that. So before, I always remember when I was starting out, a long time ago, when I was starting out and reading an interview with a costume designer who said, you shouldn't notice the costumes. I thought, what do you mean? Now, of course, I understand what she meant, you know. It's all about the character. So I think that it is that balance. It's that balance of saying we have to create. I always say I serve the script and the characters, but with this, because it was Martin McDonagh, it was a fictitious island. It was these characters who are larger than life. There was room there to bring something to it.
Yeah.
You know, and once I did and started on that, and the fantastic thing about film is once you go into pre-production, it's boom, 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 boom. Things move very fast. People have to make decisions quickly. So I was kind of hoping, okay, maybe I can slide this past, you know,
Yeah.
maybe everybody will go, but they did. And you know, it's kudos to all the cast as well, that they wore these costumes and that they made them part and parcel of the character. You know, that's it. The thing about Banshees that I think everybody can see is that collaborative nature that existed from day one. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. And I want to do a bit of a deep dive actually. So like on the three main characters, like there's not much that I really want to say about Dominic in particular because we don't have a lot of time. So I want to focus on Colin and Pádraic and Siobhan.
Yeah.
So Colin's a musician and his home's decorated with all this art and trinkets and so forth. And he's the only one that appears to wear this coat. And so when he's on the windswept plains of Inisherin, you know, that coat swings around kind of like a Western. You've referenced that. It kind of reminded me of the Clint Eastwood Western.
Yes.
But why did you how did you inform his artistic nature in the way that you dressed him?
So I think just going back to what you said about cliche, I thought, okay, I could go all out here with Colin. You know, I could start putting little bits of embroidery and braid and things, and make him look like a folkloric musician or something. And I thought, no, it has to be more subtle than that. There has to be a subtlety to it as well. So he's living on an island that probably measures 3 miles by 5 miles at the most. It's a tiny, secluded place. But when you go into his house, and what Mark did with the house and all the knickknacks and the puppets and the masks and all of that, there's this idea of, okay, there's two things. Has he traveled, or have people come to the island? And in Ireland in the 1920s, there was a big tradition that started in the early 1900s with the whole Celtic revival of people collecting folklore. Now, I mean, we see that in a lot of countries all over the world.
Yeah.
In Ireland, that started in 1900, and there were a lot of scholars coming, especially from the UK, very educated, Oxford, whatever, very educated people who were going to the islands off the coast of Ireland to collect the folklore, the oral tradition of storytelling and the music. So my idea, and I spoke to Mark about it as well. There were people like Robin Flowers and Brendan, who is incredible. Brendan's a bit like Stephen Fry. He knows everything, Brendan knew all about this as well. So it's that idea of maybe a longing within him that is brought about by visitors to the island who are telling him about the outside world. And he never gets to maybe make those journeys, but they are sending things to him and kind of feeding him. Maybe that's where this is me saying this, okay?
Yeah,
but I have to kind of, I have to create something about these characters. Maybe that's creating a certain unease within him that then, grows and grows. With Siobhan, will I jump on to Siobhan?
Well, I'm just thinking with Siobhan, for example, to me, she appears intentionally handmade, and rather than looking shabby or scruffy, she looks delicately constructed and assembled, and that makes a lot of sense for who she is and who she wants to be. And so talk me through that as well.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. The thing is, there's nothing again florid, or what she wears is quite simple. Everything that she does wear was handmade, okay, in our workroom. It was all made by the team. Everything that the cast wear, it was all made, in our workroom. So Siobhan's clothes, and I used Irish linens and Irish wools. So the yellow coat is an Irish linen wool mix that was dyed especially. The same with the Banshee. Anyway, with Siobhan, it's kind of the reverse of Colin, okay?
Yeah.
I felt that Siobhan has been to the mainland. Siobhan's a librarian, so she's got some kind of higher education somewhere. So she's on the island looking out, but saying, I'm still young enough to leave. I can go. I can make this decision and I can go. Colin is saying, I'm stuck here. I can't leave. Okay. So with Siobhan, because I felt she had been to the mainland and she's educated and smart, I wanted her dress to reflect the contemporary clothing of the time. So she's wearing dresses that are the 1920s shapes, and the coat, the red coat, is, it's a 1920s silhouette and structure and all of that. But the red of the coat that she wear, her everyday coat, is the red of the petticoats of the skirts worn by the women in the west of Ireland at that time. So she has this kind of dichotomy.
Yeah.
She has this dichotomy.
That's her.
West of Ireland. And it's exactly what was happening in Ireland at the time. We became the Irish Free State. We broke away from the United Kingdom. We're celebrating the decade of centenary at the moment. So the Civil War, the backdrop of the Civil War, the bombs exploding, there's reference to that in the film. And I think Siobhan embodies that modern, new
Yeah,
Ireland, that country that is suddenly being propelled into the present day and into the future.
that's right. And then
Mhm.
Pádraic, I'm going to try to put this as simply as I can. There's so much
Yeah,
about Colin Farrell's performance that I adore, right? To me, it's
yeah,
the performance of the year. And
yeah,
one of the reasons is because Pádraic is so lovable. He's naive. He's a simpleton, but not in a bad way. And a lot
yeah,
of that has to do with what he's wearing. And I know that for lay people, that kind of sounds crazy, but
yeah,
that red jumper with the collar and
yeah.
just the way he's so done up in certain instances, he looks like a schoolboy to me, and I just felt that was even more endearing. And I'm sure that was intentional, right?
I mean, you have it spot on. It's really lovely. I'm so happy you kind of picked up on this because the idea with Siobhan and Pádraic's relationship, they have this beautiful brother-sister relationship. It's not that often we see actually brother-sister relationships depicted on the screen the way Martin has done with the Banshees of Inisherin and with Pádraic and Siobhan. And my idea, the parents have died. I wanted Siobhan to have stepped into the mother's role. So she is really looking after Pádraic. She knows that he needs to be looked after. So when he goes out in the morning, she's, buttoning up his shirt. She's, dusting off his shoulders. She's making sure, his boots are polished. They're never that polished. He's out kicking stones and whatever. But, she's making sure that there's no holes in the soles of his boots. The water isn't getting in. She's looking after him all the time. So there's that sense of neatness to him. The house is neat, where he lives is neat and tidy. We see Siobhan sitting at the fire with the Banshee, with Mrs. McCormack, and they're, you imagine she's going to be sewing or darning or whatever. What happens to Pádraic when Siobhan leaves? That's the big question. His
Yeah,
best friend is gone, and his best friend, his sister, is gone.
it's
What is
heartbreaking.
when she comes back in 6 months' time? What is the house going to be
It's going to
like?
be a complete disaster. And
We see him if Martin made a sequel and we were to see Pádraic in 6 months' time. He'd probably be using the red jumper to, you know, clean the divorce, sorry, the donkey
the
or
goat's
something.
crap. Yeah, I know, I know.
Yeah, it's
Because
it's very poignant.
it really is. And that's what I just think, like, Eimer, it's such a great example. It's my final question. It's such a great example of how costuming is not just about frills and bonnets and gloves and hats. It's also about propelling the narrative in really subtle, nuanced ways. I didn't notice a lot of this stuff until I watched the film the second and third time. I'll admit that.
Yeah.
And I just feel like as a costume designer and you're working on something like this, I mean, what did you most take away from your experience on this film? What did you most learn about your craft?
I learned that it's I've always believed in my instincts, but sometimes I've been a bit nervous. Is this the right thing? And I think it's just really important, to believe in your instincts. Also, I just know this period so well from the
Yeah,
Win the Czech War. I've done it a few times, and I just felt, I'm when I say I was able to bring a certain maturity to that, I mean that in a very pure sense, having looked at this period from so many different angles and being given the opportunity to work with Martin and Colin and Brendan and Kerry and Barry, the whole lot, and being given Martin trusting me and not trying to second guess what I was doing or why I was doing something. He was always smiling and generous, and he just gave me free reign. And I just, I think it's really important if you employ a creative team to employ them because you want them to be creative and because you want them to bring something to your production,
yeah,
but it has to be there has to be reason behind everything,
yeah,
and I think that that's what's really interesting about the Banshees is that it can seem like a small story, but it's so true. The amount of people, including myself, it's the one film that I can watch a second time, a third time, and having worked on it, I still see things. I say, oh my God. Sometimes, it'll be something that Colin does or Ben Davis or something Mark has put in, or, it's just,
those little
it's
details.
amazing. Yeah, it's the subtlety.
I agree. I just love this film. Emma, congratulations on some beautiful work. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Lovely to meet you.